A Florida writer made headlines the other day. He had this to say about Connor McDavid. But before we get into that, make sure to subscribe here, as 92% of you have not yet subscribed to Oilers Digest as we get into the Stanley Cup Final and throughout free agency in the draft. Now, McDavid is what? Greg Cote of the Miami Herald had this to say. He said, Connor McDavid is overrated. Boom, he puts up big impressive stats. Yes, fine, but should he really be called generational? Called the best player in the sport when in 9 seasons he has yet to lead his team to Stanley Cup. And then furthermore, he went to compare Wayne Gretzky to Connor McDavid throughout their first 9 seasons. Gretzky, of course, already had won the Stanley Cup 4 times, but I mean, his supporting cast surrounding him was a little better than Connor McDavid's first 9 years. I mean, Gretzky had Yari Curry, Glenn Anderson, Mark Messier, Paul Coffey, Grant Fuhr, and then meanwhile, this is who Connor McDavid has had throughout the years. This is from the 2021 Stanley Cup Playoff Series against the Winnipeg Jets. Bob Stauffer there with the lineup card, and I mean that top six there, it's not really the strongest. I mean, Dominic Hoon and Jesse Puljujarvi supporting McDavid on the wings. And even throughout the bottom six there, the only remaining piece from that has been Ryan McLeod. And then with the decor and the goalies, the only two remaining have been Darnell Nurse and Evan Bouchard. But to say McDavid is overrated, I mean, it's just flat out wrong. Greg Cote obviously said this to rile up Canada, Edmonton, and even myself. Lots of analysts have been, just calling him wrong. I mean, rightfully so. Just it's just preposterous. It's ridiculous. It's probably one of the worst things I've even read about Connor McDavid ever. And I've read lots of crispy hot takes regarding Connor McDavid, but to say those words, I mean, it's kind of rage bait at its finest here. I'm not gonna lie. It kind of got me when I read it right away, but ever since I processed it, it's even worse than I thought it was before. I mean, the Stanley Cup is a team trophy. It's not exactly an individual trophy. Just looking at Connor McDavid's resume here, I mean, to call him overrated while looking at this, I mean, you have to be blind or just flat out a hater, and I think that's what Greg Cote is here. I mean, when it's all said and done, one key way that all players are judged is whether or not they've won major championships, and that's kind of unfair to them. I mean, it's not exactly a one-man sport, hockey, compared to like basketball with LeBron James carrying the Lakers, the Cavs, or the Miami Heat up and down, playing 3 out of the 4 quarters, leading them by himself. Okay, he can get away with that, but like in any other sport, championships aren't exactly led by one person. I mean, is Mike Trout not generational for not winning anything, even though he's probably been one of the best players of all time? No, that's kind of extremely unfair. It's kind of the teams built around them. There's not much more they can do about that. They just have to play with whoever they are given. But yeah, it's kind of unfair to critique Connor McDavid in this way just because he hasn't won anything. I mean, Jerome McGinley, I wouldn't say he's generational. Like, he's been a great player, but like that's the one thing you hang over his head is like he hasn't won a Stanley Cup. But again, individual success doesn't exactly mean that they're automatically guaranteed a Stanley Cup. I mean, Sidney Crosby, sure, he's generational, but he also had Malkin on his team. He had Marc-Andre Fleury, he had Chris Letang, uh, and it also took a player like Steve Yzerman to get a head coach in Scotty Bowman and multiple Hall of Famers on his team to finally do anything. But for Greg Cote to just flat out say he's overrated, either hasn't looked at his stats or he's just pandering to the hometown team with the Florida Panthers there and trying to get them to believe that he's not all that when really he is. Are the Oilers offended by this? Probably not. I don't even think they'll hang this in the back of their heads. But this might be Connor McDavid's MJ moment when it comes to taking a personal once he reads that. I mean, Michael Jordan read anything and everything about him in the newspaper, and he used that as fuel to the fire. Now, does Greg Cote, does he want to do this? I don't think so. But leading into the Florida series, Kris Knoblauch prepares for the Florida Panthers. He was asked in a press conference about the Oilers' experience in the Stanley Cup Final. And he had this to say. He said, experience is good. I don't know how much experience is beneficial. You can ask the Buffalo Bills how important Super Bowl experience is. Knoblauch said it with a smile. Of course, he was referencing the mid-1990s Buffalo Bills there with Jim Kelly as they went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost all 4. And he said, I think the biggest thing is having confidence in playing. When our guys are playing their best, they should have a lot of confidence. I mean, There's not much more to it than that. When the top six is rolling and then the bottom six is holding off the opposition top six, there's not much more you can ask. I mean, Kris Knoblauch, not exactly the most animated head coach the Oilers have ever had, but he's level-headed. That's exactly why Jeff Jackson and Ken Holland brought Kris Knoblauch into the locker room to bring everybody down to a level-headedness of success. And there's really not much more to it. Like I said, Knoblauch, he expects the players to play confident. They will be confident. And with the young guys like Holloway and Broberg, sure, there might be a few first-minute jitters there in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final, but then they'll settle in with experience. And it might be a little bit overrated to say that teams need playoff experience. There have been multiple Stanley Cup champions in the past. With the 2018 Washington Capitals, of course, they had the big names Karlsson, Backstrom, and Ovechkin all go into like the second round, year in and year out. But further than that, they didn't have any players with Stanley Cup rings, or even the 2019 St. Louis Blues. I mean, their goaltender was a rookie in Jordan Binnington, and there really wasn't a whole lot of Stanley Cup final experience on that team. I mean, the Oilers, you can't exactly say they have none. I mean, they have Mattias Ekholm, who made it in 2017 with the Nashville Predators, Evander Kane, 2016 with the Sharks, Corey Perry, this is his fifth different team, go into the Stanley Cup final, which is a new record, and then some other guys. I mean, Brett Kulak with the Montreal Canadiens. So you can't exactly say they have no experience. Sure, it might help them a little bit, but not to the extent that some people believe that you need Stanley Cup experience to win. And with that, I mean, bit of a slow news week leading up to the Stanley Cup Final. I mean, there's been press conferences, but it's just the same old excited to play. We're still 2 days out from the start of the Stanley Cup Final, but we will have more coverage relating to the final, during the final. Like I said, pre- and post-game analysis, and we're excited to cover it. That's all for today. I'm Matt. Thanks for tuning in.